and what we are as a program. And then I'll introduce our faculty. So I wanted to start, let's provide some context. We're a relatively new program. We have received our full accreditation by the American Library Association in 2017, and we came about in 2013 in response to an ever-growing demand from the profession, librarianship and related information professions, for leadership and management skills for MMLAS graduates, early, mid, late career librarians. And we offer a program, an LAS education, that is classic in many of the ways that a classic LAS degree is classic, but taught through a management lens, because these skills the lens that we teach through in this program, so it is an MLS degree, but again, through a management lens, are applicable and valuable and usable at every stage of the information professional's career. Every stage. We teach from a perspective of managerial leadership, meaning that in your work in our program, whether you're coming to us continuing for a certificate or an alum, mentoring, we know that these skills are important for every stage of your career and applicable at every stage of your career. I'll give you this slide, which is a piece from Library Journal, published a few years ago, in which top librarians in public school and academic environments were asked what their most desirable skills for graduates and those already in their profession are. And here is a list. And these, particularly collaboration, marketing, project management, critical thinking, creativity and innovation, are hallmarks of our program and our focus on management and leadership skills. Indeed, one of the reasons, we were a program that was founded for a changing profession. So I'm also going to while I get ready to introduce the faculty, I'll give you this visual, which provides a list of the core skills needed in the information professions, librarianship in general, specifically information professions more generally, as articulated by the, let me make sure I am recording, I am. Hold on just for a second. As articulated by various and impactful associations and stakeholders. We give you ALA's core competencies for librarians, the Library Leadership and Management Association's core competencies for librarians, and our program goals. And you will see that a common theme are management and leadership skills. This is not an exclusion of all of the other core skills that one learns in graduate school or continuing education about evolving librarianship and information work, but from the context, from a lens of management and leadership. And we think that that's one of the things that differentiates not just our program, but our graduates. And what we're going to talk about today is the hows and the whys of some of what we teach, but equally, if not more importantly, their applicability, their usefulness for you today, right now, in your careers or as you are planning your careers. A field guide to some of these skills, and we've highlighted in red here all of the different topics that we're going to be touching on today through what our instructors and the courses, our instructors are going to be talking to you in the courses they teach. The immediate applicability of these skills and why they are so important both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, from, again, wherever you happen to be in your career. We welcome Dr. Miriam Philadelphia, Miriam Burgos. Miriam will not be joining us today because she has another commitment. Dr. Philadelphia is going to be talking about marketing and communication skills on her behalf. Myself, I'm the director of the program and an associate professor of clinical management and organization in the program. And Harris Smith, who teaches our financial management course. Let me tell you a little bit about each one of these instructors, and then we'll get started. We'll start with Dr. Philadelphia. Miriam Philadelphia has a background in public relations, journalism, marketing, and the themed entertainment industry. Originally from Germany, she has edited and translated works of nonfiction, contributed to Caltech's Einstein Papers project, and is a published novelist. A business communication and educational leadership expert, she specializes in pedagogy, curriculum, instructional design, and faculty professional development. She is a recipient of the USC Mellon Award for Excellence in Faculty Mentoring. I benefited from that. And the Evans C. Thompson Faculty Mentoring and Leadership Award. She will be covering also, as I mentioned, Miriam Burgos's marketing and communications material course. I'll tell you a little bit about Miriam. Miriam Burgos specializes in multicultural marketing and sales management. Prior to joining USC, she worked in the consumer packaged good industry with Procter & Gamble for many years and Colgate-Palmolive, where she developed expertise in how a multinational corporation successfully takes a product to market in a global economy, from initial concept to branding, and ultimately to consumers' homes and workplaces. She was a project manager for Procter & Gamble's multicultural business and development organization, and also has experience in marketing strategy, cause marketing, and small business marketing plan and development. Harris Smith is a retired audit partner with Grant Thornton and served clients across a broad array of industries over his 40-year career. Harris began with Grant Thompson in Baltimore, transferred to Los Angeles in 1989. He moved to San Francisco as managing partner in 2002 and became the West Region managing partner in 2005. In 2005, Harris relocated to LA, and in 2009 transitioned back into a client service mode. He is the president of the board of JVS of LA, a member of the California Society and American Institute of CPAs, and has served on various other community boards. And a little bit about myself. I am a librarian by practice and trade. For many years, I served as an academic library dean before doing my doctoral work and moving on to the teaching side, partly because I wanted to make a difference in making the skills that LIS students are coming into the profession with. I have an MBA from Illinois Institute of Technology, as well as my MLIS from Dominican University and my BA from the University of Illinois. So I welcome, and I forgot to talk about the academic credentials of our speakers. Those are on the bios on our website, my apologies. We're gonna start with Dr. Philadelphia, who is going to be talking about work teaching project management and how those skills are immediately applicable, and management communication for leaders. So with that, I will turn this over to Dr. Philadelphia, and we will be advancing the slides again for you, Marianne. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us. It's great to have you here, and I will see you at the Q&A session at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you all to the participants who have joined us this morning. So I teach management communication for leaders. That's my main course, and I would like to contextualize this a little bit. All our master's programs at the Marshall School of Business feature a communication core course usually in the first semester that students are joining any of our programs. Communication skills are the very fundamental necessary skills in any profession that you are pursuing. It's very important to understand that people are the ones who are running our economies, who are running our companies, who are running our organizations, who are running our libraries. No matter if you are in an academic library, or if you are in a public library or a corporate library or data management system division of any other corporation. So to hone your communication skills and to really think about communication strategically really positions you to lead in your unit or to lead your library eventually. It gives you a competitive advantage, because most of the time people don't really think about communication. We are all doing it, but we're not thinking about it. You know, how can I be strategic in my approach to deal with my colleagues, with my patrons, with anyone else in your lives for that matter? So Management Communication for Leaders is a really great course, and it is divided into 4 main phases. Next slide, please. So in the first phase of the course, you will learn a lot about how communication functions in day-to-day life, what your communication style is. So you're very much introspective, self-awareness, self-reflection, self-regulation come into play. So you learn a lot about, your communication style and how other individuals perceive you as a communicator. Why do you have very effective communication with some people in your environment, and maybe less effective communication with other people in your environment. So you will learn why this is, who you are as a communicator, and how you can adapt your communication style so that you are successful in all your daily interactions and feel good about, the processes that you are engaging with. And again, people skills is one of, ALA's objectives, as you have seen earlier in Professor Stewart's introduction. It is, you're dealing with patrons, you're dealing with staff, you're dealing with colleagues, you're dealing with partners in city governments or, in other organizational divisions. So people are all around you at all times. It's not a solitary job to work in the library information science field. So phase 1 really looks at who you are as a communicator and to develop in that sense. Then in the next phase, we look at organizational leadership communication. So how do you manage teams? How do you effectively contribute to a team? How do you lead a team? What are situations of conflict? How do you resolve conflict? How can you benefit from conflict? How do you work effectively and efficiently and in synergy to bring your projects or your day-to-day operations in the library to fruition? And this is a very necessary skill, I would say, in any profession, but specifically also in the library world, because there is a constant interaction among your colleagues and among staff members, and you need to learn how to break through, maybe some of the communication barriers that might exist in your immediate environment or in your organization for that matter. So really looking at cases, you're looking at your own workplace, analyzing the workplace, where do you see room for improvement in terms of enhancing communication so that workplace processes will run smoothly and effectively, and always with the end goal that we all want to be effective at work. We want to feel good about what it is that we are doing. And this really sort of like resonates, with your whole workplace and makes everyone feel motivated and more successful in their, task completion on a day-to-day basis. Then we're also looking at, you will be working in teams at this phase in the course. We will also be looking at written and external communication. So you will be engaging in identifying a project for which you will write a grant proposal so that you get funding and will be able to realize the project. This is often an area that is not as familiar to the students, and they are really grateful for getting a glimpse at what it takes to engage in soliciting funds from, other organizations, foundations, and so forth that will subsidize or help, bringing a project to life that you have envisioned. And then lastly, we will talk about communication, about negotiation, how to best negotiate within your environment, no matter if it is for maybe a new process that you want to establish, or if it is, for your salary or whatever you need to negotiate between different parties in your environment and so forth. And then lastly, we will talk about creativity and what creativity means in this day and age where, people are all knowledge workers in our environment, and everyone brings a lot of knowledge into the environment, and it's really important to realize, what is everyday creativity, how can we enhance our workplace and our relationships across all the constituents and stakeholders that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So that's in a nutshell the 4 phases of the course, and always obviously looking at inclusion as a main topic, and how we ensure that all the stakeholders and constituents that we are dealing with on a daily basis, or you are dealing with, will be able to contribute and so that they feel good about themselves, and so that every voice gets heard. All right, so a few points about the course objectives. I just want to touch briefly on this. I think you have already realized, the depths of the course. So you will build your communication competence, and with it, your confidence that you bring to your workplace. Communication competence, knowing how to contribute to a meeting, knowing how to work effectively in a team, knowing how to deal with your patrons is a really important skill. You will recognize, contrast, and categorize individual communication behaviors. Again, you will easily be able to adapt your communication behavior so that you can deal with all kinds of different constituencies, and kind of like hone your leadership communication skill in that way. You will also learn how to give feedback to others, which is a really important aspect. How do you provide constructive feedback? And you will understand how to support others and mentor others in this process. So also very important in our day-to-day life, coaching others. You will be able to differentiate the impact communication and leadership behaviors can have. You will devise strategies and techniques to maybe improve the communication at your workplace. And then lastly, you will also, since we're in an online world more or less, and online and virtual has taken on a whole new meaning, especially coming out of COVID. So you will learn how to differentiate, between the different needs that you have to apply, the skills you have to apply in the virtual world versus the residential, in-person world.
Dr. Philadelphia, before we
yes.
move on to the next course, can I stop it and ask a couple of quick questions?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a panel, so I figured. Thank you very much. Okay, so with when we talk about sort of like these are goals for the management communication for leaders, of course, the immediate applicability into one's workplace. And whether that be libraries or any environment, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about benefiting from conflict, an example of that, and kind of a right away takeaway for what can I do to better contribute to a meeting in terms of my preparation.
Yeah, so healthy conflict is really important, actually, and it goes back to are people willing and ready to contribute, maybe if they have a different opinion than you do. And so this is really important. It builds on the idea that an organization needs to have a foundation of trust. And so you try to build an environment that where people feel they can contribute freely. This will create conflict because people have different opinions about project completion, or they have a different idea about something. And so the interface of this conflict comes to a positive result. If people withhold their ideas and do not contribute their ideas because they are afraid of conflict, then your basket of ideas and your approach to completing a project will be minimized. And some people might feel excluded, actually. But so you have to work hard on building that trust, building a team or building an environment in which people feel they can contribute freely, and understand that it might result in conflict situations, but this is a healthy conflict that will then, help the project or the work environment overall. Okay. And sorry, your second question, like, what's another?
To better, communication skills and contributing to meetings. What are some specific examples of some things that, like, say, an early career librarian or somebody who is even in another field?
Yeah, I think that the early career individual oftentimes lacks confidence to freely contribute and think, maybe they don't have enough experience yet, etc. So through the course, you kind of hone your communication confidence, as I said earlier, and you learn how to enter the conversation and contribute your idea. There are certain ways to phrase, like, how do you enter a conversation? May I really appreciate what you have just said. May I add to this? So there are certain techniques that you can use, that you can prepare, and that you can then rely on, that will help you contribute to your team more effectively.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Stewart. Now on to library project management. This course is very, very important because the library environment, and any other professional environment for that matter, relies a lot on larger and smaller projects. And so this course kind of goes really deeply into what it means to get a project off the ground. And what I mean by getting a project off the ground is, you might want to install a new service for your patrons at your library, or you want to maybe schedule and run a writers' conference, or you might want to add extensively to your collection, offerings that you have already. So any of these projects involve detailed planning that needs to include a look at, all the stakeholders involved. How feasible is this for my environment, for my organization? Do I have all the knowledge, all the staff, all the resources that it takes? And so the level of detail that goes into project management is quite extensive, because you also need to work with a lot of different stakeholders. What I said earlier, in your environment, you have staff, you have partners in other organizations, in city governments, etc. You have patrons. So all these stakeholders influence your projects, and you might need other, additional experts that contribute to your project. And so planning out a project, the scope of the project, how long will this take, what will it cost, when do I need the money, for which phase do I need the money coming in, who are people I have to rely on, who are people I might have to hire, who are people I might have to train. So there are the spectrum of smaller items in any project it's very huge, depending on the size of the project, and the level of detail that needs attention is very important, because if you do not pay attention to all these details, then you might have a delay with your project, or it might not get off the ground, or you might not get the funding, etc. And the eye is always obviously on succeeding and pulling off a great project for you and your organization, or your library for that matter. Is it a long-term or a short-term project? Is it a one-time or repetitive project? So there are so many aspects to project management that you really need to drill down on. And so in this course, that's what you're going to be doing. Again, it's I like to structure courses in phases. And so we have phase 1 that discusses, what are projects in libraries, what different kinds are there. What is a so-called business case? So the whole course relies on the Project Management Institute, which is the trade institute for all project management. So you can actually become a certified project manager through the Project Management Institute, which is a very complex course that you can theoretically take. And it's industry-wide, so it's across industries. There are certified project managers through the Project Management Institute. So again, in the first phase, it is about creating a business case. What is a business case? This is basically the core of what it is that you want to pull off the ground, where you still are pitching it to stakeholders, maybe the board of your library or organization or other involved stakeholders. Then you will actually, in the second phase, again, working in teams, because project management is very much a team effort, develop the strategy, the scope of the work. You will create fundamental components and charts that go into every project management, such as the work breakdown schedule, the project breakdown timeline. You will create a budget and so on. So you will learn how to create all these different documents that inform a project, so-called project charter, which you will then create in the third phase of the course, a full-length proposal, including the charter, that you will then present to the stakeholders. And then in the last phase, we are going into a review phase. What have we learned? What have you learned? What would you do if you were the project manager of Project X? That pretty much puts the project management course into a nutshell. Again, you will learn about the importance of project management, developing a project. You can actually kind of relate back to the grant proposal project that you did in your previous communication management for leaders course, and integrate this with your project management in this course, if your team decides to go with a similar project. And you will also, again, revisit what does it mean, to have healthy conflict in a team? How vulnerable can I be? How can I build a project team that succeeds and it synergizes effectively together to bring your project to completion? All right, and I think I have like 4.5 minutes left. I'm now going into the marketing course.
Thanks. I wish we had time to talk about some of the project work that our students do, and what we can find early in one's career. I mean, like you're managing projects from the get-go in your career, from every phase. We have our students doing, and we have, I remember in my career, like needing these skills very badly, having to make that argument, say a public librarian who's outlining a new program, for example, an outreach program, and all of these things, making that argument for money and for resources, academic library information literacy and public library information literacy programming. This is all the job of the library professional, and it's not certainly not just directors who are coming, saying these are the ideas, let's roll these projects out. It's librarians and information professionals at every level of the organization.
Yes, absolutely. And always thank you, Christopher, for adding that. And absolutely. And so students are also, interested in how can the library, if it is a public library, expand their impact on the community. For example, I had one team adding a satellite social services component to their local library system. And when we bounced this off a project manager at a real library, he was very, very enthusiastic about their idea. And so I think that this applicability is really something that resonates with the students and gives them also something to talk about when you're going into interviews for jobs. All right, so very applicable in that sense. And likewise, I would say that the marketing management course, like once you have these projects, you need to sell them to the public, and always with an eye on what is my environment, so there is a lot of focus on cultural research, ethnographic marketing research within the region that you're operating in, which is where digital marketing and survey design comes in, that is really focusing on who is my audience, who are my patrons, whom am I, promoting my programs to. So foundational marketing, you will learn foundational marketing principles and frameworks. You will learn the language of marketing. You will also develop surveys and learn how to phrase the questions so that you can solicit input from your constituency to then develop a marketing strategy that will really resonate and will bring the most patrons or visitors, to your branch, to your library system, or to your organization, whatever it may be. Geodemographic segmentation data in LIS research and marketing is a very allows you to go deeply into what your regional makeup of customers or patrons is, and really further tailor your marketing efforts, maybe through social media, through local media outlets, maybe through even interviews, etc., in your particular region. So the marketing course really is, the marketing in the library field is more important than you might maybe think, because the libraries really have a mission, to serve the community, to serve their corporate constituencies, if it's a corporate library, or their academic constituencies. And in this day and age, I think we don't want to forget about the library and the services. We want to rather highlight the importance of information sharing and information access that will allow everyone in the community, no matter if it's academic or public, to really take advantage of all the resources and all the systems and all the services that the libraries have to offer. And just very quickly, the examples of course materials are, there's a course reader, that it's case-based, there will be podcasts and other digital marketing tools and platforms that you will learn about in your course. All right, very applicable and very much on the pulse of what is needed in libraries today. And with that, I will pass it back to Dr. Stewart, and then I think on to Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Philadelphia. I know we're not allowed to plug, well, I guess we are, we can do whatever we choose here, but I can't say enough about Kathy Dempsey's work. The accidental library marketer, for a takeaway from today. I mean, it's a great book, and she has a wonderful blog. Marketing and outreach skills are consistently identified by leaders in academic libraries and archives and public libraries and corporations, for information professionals that are working in corporate sectors and government libraries, as a not just desirable skill, but a needed skill for current graduates coming into the field and for those in the field to have. I have one quick, many, but Marion, I want to get this over to Harris in a second. Can you give us an example of the language of a marketing plan, what you mean by that term?
Yeah, I mean, the language of the, before you engage in marketing, you do market research, right? And you develop surveys for patrons or for other constituencies that you want to market to. And so you need to formulate the questions in a way that they will, result in giving you the most information about the people that you are marketing to, so that you can develop a targeted, tailored campaign or strategy that will resonate and bring these people to the product that you are promoting to them.
Know your user.
Yes, exactly.
Device, wherever you are in your career journey. Thank you so much. Let's turn it over now to Harris Smith. I want to apologize in advance for some of these slides are a little bit inconsistent. We were going back between versions this morning, so there's going to be larger fonts and smaller fonts, but we hope that doesn't detract from the actual content. So with that, we will hand this over to Harris. Thank you again, Dr. Philadelphia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Dr. Philadelphia, thanks for promoting me to a doctor. I'm not really a doctor, but I did earn my PhD working for one company for 40 years. I feel like I got it through experience versus the academic community. And using a baseball analogy, I'm going to bat cleanup. And being in Los Angeles with the excitement of the World Series, go Dodgers, what I'm going to talk about is very similar to what Dr. Philadelphia talked about, and to a certain extent, Dr. Stewart, because you talked about communication, you talked about collaboration, you have to know your customers, and accounting is accounting and financial management. And by the way, I've taught at USC through the Leventhal School of Accounting and Marshall many different accounting courses. This happens to be one of my most challenging courses because I get 7 weeks to teach people how to use financial information, not to teach them how to become a CPA. It's impossible to do that in 7 weeks. When it comes to what it is accountants try and do, there's various forms of accounting. I grew up on the audit side, there's the tax side, there's the internal side, there's all sorts of, somebody mute their, thank you. So similar to what Dr. Philadelphia said about communication and people skills, understanding the economic activity of a business, whether it's a library or it's Amazon or a library for Google, you have to really understand the true economic activity of the business. And one key way to do that in a meaningful way is to truly understand what the business is that you're in. I couldn't run a hospital. I probably couldn't run a library, but I could run an accounting firm, and I could audit a set of financial statements. People often ask me how much is 1 + 1. You've probably heard that, and if you say 2 in a job interview, you're not going to get hired. Generally, you say, well, what would you like it to be? So there's a lot of variation in accounting, but my purpose in this course is try to convey key objectives, key issues that will help somebody understand or use a set of financial statements. It could be just a budget. It could be a complete set of financial statements. And given the recent, and I'm going to say the last 22 years, the recent issues that we've had in the accounting world, going back to the 2000 dot-com bust, going back to the 2008 financial meltdown, or even last year in 2020 with COVID and the havoc it played on the economy and the accounting and financial reporting, it all comes back to trust, which I heard earlier. We had a crisis of confidence, and how do you get around that crisis of confidence just with those three key issues? And I think if you looked in the Wall Street Journal every day, you'll read about a company that probably does something stupid or they're not proud of. But so again, the goal of this course is to teach a user, a student, on how to interpret perhaps a budget for a library system, or a metadata budget for Google, or something along those lines. So we go over basic financial statements. We understand, just go back to the previous slide. We go back to incentives for managers who prepare these financial statements, because you will be working with those. And that comes down to behaviors, incentives, behaviors, whether it's deliberate or otherwise, and all the discretion that you can have in accounting. And again, I'm just going to, by way of example, excuse me, USC is a private institution, so they follow one set of accounting standards, generally accepted accounting standards for not-for-profit entities. You go over across the street to UCLA, they're a government-owned institution, and they have to follow government accounting standards. So you have two entities doing exactly the same thing when it comes to library management, but theoretically they could have different results. So you have to be able to interpret and understand, and you know, quality, discretion are key when it comes to financial, understanding financial statements. Next slide, please. So we talk about, how does an accounting system work? What information do you need to understand a set of financial statements? What is the accrual method of accounting? Well, in short, the accrual method of accounting is just the true economic activity of a business. You certainly can't pay your employees with inventory. You can't pay your employees or your vendors with accounts receivable. So you have to understand how a balance sheet, and again, in this industry, the not-for-profit world, library world, a balance sheet could have a different name. It could be a statement of financial position, or it could be a balance sheet. You have an income statement, and you have various other financial statements. And companies have discretion. Sometimes it's not always done in the most ethical way. If you go back to 2000, we've had, you know, or 2001, you had the great Enron fiasco, and there's many other companies that management tried to use accounting trickery and accounting gimmicks to hide discrepancies, falsehoods, basically stealing from their constituencies. We talk about how revenues are recognized. We talk about, you know, if somebody donates an art collection or a library collection, how is that accounted for? And there are different ways. Again, if somebody donates to a library a famous painting, you don't depreciate it. But if they donate a set of books, you would depreciate it, which means you are accounting for its usefulness over a period of time. We go into fundamental things like, you know, what is an expense? What is a capital item versus an expenditure? Everything you spend is an expenditure. It could be on the building, which is an asset, or it could be paying the electric bill, which is an expense. So again, we talk about all sorts of areas on the financial statements. We also talk about intangible assets. What is an intangible asset? Well, suppose somebody donates a manuscript to the library, or suppose somebody donates a famous document to a library system. How do they account for that? It's very challenging, tricky, but again, when the fundamental issue that I talk about in this course is ethical reporting, consistent, ethical, and conservative reporting. That's important. Now, the last item on the slide talks about, and one that you may not think would apply to certainly a public library, but if you're going to work for Google or some private company and manage their library, you might want to understand how you could be compensated with stock options. So we talked briefly about that in the course. Next slide, please. Again, the basic financial statements are used by investors, lenders, suppliers, managers, government, regulators, lawyers, boards of directors. They are the dipstick measurement of the financial health of a business. And typically the financial statements are based on history, but they're used to project the future. They're used to project credit decisions. So if the LA County Library System wants to do a $100 million bond offering because they want to build a new library, depending on the credit history of the County of Los Angeles, that will determine how much or what the interest rate will be in the bond offering. And again, consistent, ethical, conservative financial statements are the best way to go. Desirable features of an accounting system, again, I'm going to say it again: consistency, comparability, relevance, reliability. And there are trade-offs, okay? Not to spend too much time on it, but you can't have everything all the time. You sometimes you have to give a little bit here and a little bit there, and settle in the middle. Next slide. Okay, so again, you have the balance sheet, you have the income statement, you have the statement of shareholders' equity. Again, in the not-for-profit world, it may have a different name. The statement of cash flows is really interesting because under the accrual method of accounting, it assumes that no cash has to change hands. You may sell something on credit. A library may buy 1,000 books on credit, and they owe money to their vendor for 1,000 books. No money's changed hands, but you then have to go back and reconcile your balance sheet. Well, you put those books on your balance sheet because you paid something for them, but you haven't paid for them yet. So the interconnectivity of all these financial statements, and there's only 4. Again, income statement, statement of cash flows, statement of shareholders' equity, and the balance sheet with footnotes. There's 4 financial statements, but if you looked at the footnotes of any company, any public library system, there could be 50, 60, 100 pages of footnotes that explain those various line items. Next. And I've kind of talked about that, so we can skip over this one here. But what I found, and if we could put up bring up the link of that, great. I'm sure there are other examples out there, but what I found to be of enormous value to the students was the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Actually, believe it or not, this is the wrong link. It should be the Pennsylvania Public Library Accounting Manual, and there we go. And if you just look through the index, this is a great takeaway for the students. Because again, in 7 weeks, you can't teach everything in accounting. It took me 4 years in undergrad. But this is kind of like the accounting manual for dummies. And students can refer back to, if you slide down to the index, keep going, next one, okay. It talks about accounting for nonprofit libraries. It talks about how to account for expenses or how to account for library books. And if you slide down further, it talks about budgeting and payroll. And all of these things are just, this is a terrific takeaway. And and again, it's 174 pages long. I encourage all of you to look at it. And there could be other states that have better, but this is the one that I found that is most useful and most up to date. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Stewart.
Let me put that in that link in the chat. Harris, a question for you.
Sure.
So let's stop the share here. So as a takeaway, so this is, I remember early in my career, right? Not really giving any attention to where does the money come from. And I worked in academic libraries, but I also worked was going to work in archives and special, wherever you work. And I remember thinking like, I never really was concerned with where the money came from. And much to my detriment, there was a lot I could have really benefited from early in my career knowing that. So if you were to say like, those of them who are here today, and maybe considering an LIS program or maybe already in the field, what would be going into a job interview or going back to my workplace today? What would be a good? What do I absolutely need to know? Would it be, how do I find out where revenues come from? What kind of questions should I be asking? And why is that important to me as, say, a new youth services librarian or an archivist for a government organization, right, or a metadata librarian for the Jet Propulsion Lab? Who should I ask those questions to? How can I find that out? And how do they affect me?
If it's in the public arena, let's say the LA County system, they have to produce an annual financial statement, and it shows you where the money comes from. It's property taxes, it could be sales taxes. So I would encourage you to take a look at the financial statements, and they're audited, meaning at the highest level of certification by a giant firm, or Price Waterhouse or KPMG, something like that, a firm like that. And understand where the sources of money come from. Now, typically, a library system is, they're not income producers; they're income users.
Right.
But they get money from, say, property taxes or sales taxes. Yeah, they get a little bit of revenue if there's a membership fee or something, or if they sell gadgets and stuff like that. But best is to take a look at the financial statements of, say, Google or the MIT Metadata Center. Read up on there's so much information available on the net about where companies get money from, and that would be just a great source.
Yeah, and question day one, right? Where is the revenue from? Because that impacts me in my position, priorities placed on what I'm doing in the library, what programs I'm running, my salary. Would you say that my next and last question for you is, I had a couple for my thanks to both of you for allowing me to jump in like this. Why would, and this is the accountant teaching information professionals, why is it important for me as either a current, new, mid-career information professional or somebody coming into the profession to understand these things, reading a basic budget? Why does that impact me? I'm busy, designing this youth outreach center's teen library, or doing this program in digital humanities and the library, or metadata library for a university, or wherever I am. Why is it important for me to understand that?
Accountability is most important. First of all, there's not an unlimited supply of money, even if it's Google. So if you're given, $1 million to develop a particular project, you better have as Dr. Philadelphia said, you have to have project management, you have to have accountability, you have to have an accounting system, and you're going to be, I had a student once ask me, Harris, am I going to have to do a budget? I said, no, you're going to collaborate with the accounting department. They're actually going to do the budget, but you're going to give them the information for the budget. But accountability is paramount. That's how we all get measured at the end. You talked earlier, just before you asked me the question, cash is king. Where does the money come from? How is it measured? Is it measured ethically? Is it measured consistently? And those are the tenets of generally accepted accounting principles. I know that's accounting speak, but those are the basic tenets of the financial system, of the stock exchange, of how hopefully all of you manage your own money. Is you want to be consistent and ethical. Occasionally you go out and you spend $8 on a triple latte or something like that, but you're not going to do that every day.
Okay, thank you so much to Marion and Harris. Wonderful. We have 1 or 2 more minutes, and for anybody who wants to stick around, Alexis, do you want to moderate the Q&A, or should I just open it up?
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat right now and I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay, that's fine. We used up a lot of the time. We will have, all of this will be on INFOcon, so you can contact Harris or Dr. Philadelphia or myself, anybody, from wherever you are in your career or education journey, we're always happy to talk to you. And with that, Alexis, anything I need to do to close us out?
No, just thank you everyone for joining us. I know that everyone's probably jumping on to your next session, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.